All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are
Hello.
you, Talia?
I'm great. How are you, Eric?
Did I just yell in your ears?
Yeah, why are you
Right.
screaming?
I don't know. I know I have a mic. I know it works. I have to scream when it comes out. Welcome to Serverless Office Hours. We're so excited you're here. I'm back to screaming again. Did you see me dancing during the music?
No.
I
Thank you.
was doing some sweet old moves. I reached way back in my repertoire. I brought up some 80s stuff. So you missed it. I'm sorry. It's gone. But hey, I'm glad you're out there. Talia, I'm glad you're here. You and I haven't done anything in a little while, and I love hanging
Oh,
out with you, of course.
yeah, I think
So
the last time we did serverless office hours was like months and months ago.
it was. It was. Hey, a bit early for the. Sorry, Tony. I apologize. I've been told it's a bit early for the screaming. I am a loud person. This is Talia can attest to this. She's met me and seen me in person, and this is not an act for the screen. I'm just loud. Talia, you want to tell them?
Yes, you are. You are. But it's good for
So,
when you're presenting on stage and you like project your voice, you know? You don't
and
even need a microphone. You just
lunch and lunch at a small quiet restaurant. It's good for that as well too. So anyway, Talia, what are we talking about today?
Okay, so today we are going to talk about DynamoDB and Lambda and how they work together to build serverless applications. I know we talk a lot about Lambda on serverless office hours, but another serverless service is DynamoDB, which is our fully managed NoSQL database. And so we're going to talk about using them together. We're going to talk about some security and some different configurations you could have. And then at the end, I want to show you all a couple of patterns from the serverless patterns collection. I think that would be a good place to end.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. This is one of my favorites. I don't know if I coined the phrase. I said it, and then people say I think Eric Johnson said, but I use this term called storage first. Oh, look, there's Teddy. Stop. There's Teddy.
Everybody
What's up,
stop.
Teddy? All right. There's Teddy. Yep. Okay. So anyway, Teddy's like, could you tell him to stop screaming? So anyway, one of my favorite patterns is the idea of storage first, and I actually use DynamoDB a lot for the storage first pattern because I like, and again, it's the right tool for the right job, but I like the idea of being able to have that data not just persistent for retries and for a certain amount of time, but to have it there until I'm ready to dump it. And so I kind of like that. I kind of like that pattern, and I know we'll talk more about that. So,
Eric, what's storage first? What's a storage first?
Storage first pattern. I have a blog. Now that you've asked, I have a blog that I'm going to put on there. But storage first pattern is the idea of getting your data persistent before you act upon it. Okay, so it would be an asynchronous model. Usually, it's an asynchronous model. Here's the reason I say that, and I've said this a lot and in joking, but there's truth to it. The most brittle part of an application, and if you've heard me speak at all, I've said this a billion times. I'm going to say it 1,000,000,001 times. The most brittle part of an application is Eric Johnson's code. If Eric Johnson isn't developing for you, then you're probably a little better. But it is code, right? It's that thing we change all the time. It's that thing that differentiates us, and it's a thing that probably hasn't been as tested as much as some of the configuration that we set up with serverless. And so when you do standard kind of patterns, you ask the question. Now I'm probably going to take the whole hour explaining this, but
No,
when you do,
it's a good foundation for what we're going to talk about.
It is. When you do standard patterns, a lot of time what we see is very much invoke a Lambda function. And I love Lambda. I talk about Lambda all the time. Sometimes I do Lambdas with a little lower L so Chris can freak out. But Lambda functions, we use those all the time. But what happens is if I invoke a Lambda and then my code, because we talked about how brittle Eric's code is, goes bad, and I haven't properly written in the error handling, things like that, that data is gone. And if that's just, hey, I'm posting something on a blog or something like that, that's one thing. But when you're collecting people, credit card numbers or things like that, that becomes very problematic when you have to go back to the customer and go, hey, look, I know you gave us this one time, but And we lost it. We lost your credit card, and I'm sorry. It was probably Talia's code and not mine. But the problem is we lost your credit card. Can you give it to us again, and we'll try again? And most clients are gonna be like, nope, I'm gonna go somewhere else. But instead, if I write it to DynamoDB first, and you can do a direct integration from an API gateway to a Dynamo. I don't want to steal the thunder here from your patterns, but there we go. API gateway to DynamoDB or step functions to DynamoDB, where it's literally just routing straight there. And then off the stream, you react to that. Then I work on that data. If my Lambda function fails, I can say, that's okay. We've still got the information. Now, let's change the story, because when we talk about credit cards, we probably shouldn't be saving them to our database, PCI, things like that.
Shouldn't you encrypt that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are doing that, you're setting up something PCI. Boy, we've gone astray here, but you definitely want encryption at rest, encryption and in transit, which you get out of DynamoDB out of the box. But yeah, and there's some other things you'd want to do that, but that gives you the idea of, if I persist the data before we expose it to Eric Johnson's code. That sounds weird. Sounds nefarious, doesn't it? Before we expose it to Eric Johnson's code, it goes, breaks it all. Then you have a safety catch to act on that data again, do something else. So that's why I love the storage pattern first. It doesn't have to be DynamoDB. It can be, SQS, SNS, all kinds of things that have the retry.
Great.
That was a lot. There you go. And we're out. Everybody have a good day. So
I've heard of those solutions before, but I've never heard storage, like the term storage first.
That hurts a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you. So what I just heard in my head was, I really don't listen when you're talking, Eric. So, but you do whatever.
Everybody, this is going to be my last Serverless Office Hours.
Last ever. Actually, I'm not. That's Julian's choice, but I'm going to pay Julian. Yes. So no. That's good. You're good. I did a blog on it a while back, but I've actually kind of started saying configuration over code, because it helps folks understand that. But yes, I did say the word that, and I'm going to go ahead and post this blog to both YouTube and Twitch chats. So this talks more about the storage first and how we actually use HTTP API to set some of those up. But you can do it with REST APIs. You can do it with step functions, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I think something that we should start with is the benefits to building serverless applications with DynamoDB. Like I think our community knows Lambda and what it does, and I think our community knows what a serverless application is. But I think that sometimes we don't think about how to build serverless applications with both DynamoDB and Lambda. So maybe some of the benefits we could talk about is the scale of DynamoDB and how that helps with building serverless applications.
Yeah, I would start. So let me ask you this. You've not heard of storage first, right? Have you ever heard of Amazon.com? It's a little website we threw up. Some e-commerce going on, that kind of thing.
All those boxes outside of my apartment.
Yeah, it's got the smile. So yeah, exactly. Yeah, all those boxes. That's what all my Diet Dr. Pepper comes to me in, are Amazon boxes.
Yeah.
But yeah. So DynamoDB wasn't just something we built for customers, something we built for us. And it powers this thing called Black Friday, where you have a ton of traffic around Thanksgiving or and so yeah, DynamoDB, the magic of DynamoDB is incredibly high input output, incredibly reliable, incredibly durable. And Talia, I know you have some to say on that, so I'm going to kind of let you run with that. But yeah,
you're absolutely right. So in terms of Amazon.com, like normally when you have sales on Amazon.com, those events get pushed onto either a queue, probably a queue. I don't know how Amazon.com does it, but I'm sure they put it on. They put the events onto a queue, and then they get processed, and then the order gets put into a database. And normally, that happens at like a normal pace. But on days like you said, like Black Friday or like Prime Day or whatever, those events happen much, much, much faster, and everything needs to be able to scale to be able to not have an outage and all that. So I think DynamoDB is really helpful, not just with Amazon.com, but just with any sort of like e-commerce site
Right.
too, where you have sales or where you have like promotions. James Bezic gave me a really good example of this when I was first learning DynamoDB, where there's an example where like if you see an advertisement on TV for, let's say they're selling shoes, and everyone wants to buy those shoes, and this advertisement gets blasted into a ton of countries, and millions of people view this ad, and they all want to buy shoes. So then they all go to the shoe website to buy those shoes, and the website crashes. Like they spent all the money on advertising, and then no one was able to buy anything because their services couldn't scale. So DynamoDB, I think, is a really great solution for that.
I agree. Hugely powerful. Real quick call out. I posted here and he made a joke. This is Kirk. Kirk is part of our DynamoDB team. He is in the chat. He is going to be answering questions if you have specific questions. We did have a question come in. So before we jump further, let me see what we got here. It says, hey, quick question regarding the AWS Snowball Edge for large data migrations to AWS for data center migration project. I'm concerned for zero downtime on how to migrate the new data on-prem after shipping AWS Snowball Edge. So that's a good concern. Do you know what Snowball Edge is, Talia? It's okay if you say no.
I don't, but tell me.
Okay, Snowball Edge is actually a device that we can send out to customers, and it's really cool. It's like this block, and it's got it's actually like a Kindle Paperwhite, and it's got data. And on this Snowball Edge it has Greengrass, which Greengrass is the ability to run local compute. It uses Lambda for it. It also has this massive amount of storage, just incredible terabytes. And I used to have it all memorized with serverless. I don't do it, but. And then so what we do is we send it out to the customer. They load it up with data. They can send it back to us, and it can do compute against that data. So either on coming in or on coming out, you can scrub data, add data, whatever you want to do, enrich the data. And then when you get here, we plug it in, we pop it in, and it all dumps into an S3 bucket for the client. And what they're asking here is when we get the Snowball Edge, we don't want downtime, right? We need to be able to use. We need to be able to send this massive amount of data and anything that comes by the time we send it out to the time that it gets there. And there's several ways. It depends on the kind of data you're looking at. Is it database data? If it's DB data, you can actually use data migration services that can help do that, and that will actually sync up data. You can look at using there is some sync capabilities, and again, I don't know how much we're talking. Obviously, a lot since it's a snowball. But what you can do is you can say once that goes in there, you can use the CLI and you can sync data to say what's in there and what do I need to push over. I can't guarantee you no downtime, but I've seen folks do it with very little downtime. We've just hit the peak of my experience with Snowball. So boop, there it is. But what I would have you do is hit me on Twitter at EDJ Geek, and I can connect you. I actually know I spent some time in Saudi when we did that big trip. One of the gentlemen there was from our Snowball team, and he is an expert. Surprisingly he knows more than I do about Snowball. And I'll connect you with Tim, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. So Cloud Guru 2053, hit me on Twitter and I'll connect you up, or send me an email at ericdj@amazon.com. So, all right, there we go. Any other questions before we go? All right. Here we go. Is DynamoDB good for fast changing data like session IDs? Suggestions of DB for this type of storage. Good vibes. Okay. What do you think, Ty?
Yeah, I think DynamoDB is great for like using data reliably. So yep. I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could do caching if you want. We had Redis suggested here. You could absolutely do caching, but DynamoDB is a great way to do it because it is so fast. It also works really well with serverless in that you're not. I don't think you would push your connection strings or your stuff like this to RDS, but you're not managing connections, things like that. It's just a quick API call, and it's very quick. And as Kirk says here, it's great for sessions, especially when you add the TTL feature, which there was a big debate a while back. To be clear, the TTL is not exact. It is not millisecond exact, but within about 48 hours, it will clear out anything you've set for the time. on that. So it is good for sessions with a follow-up cleanup.
Yeah. And I think nowadays, like people just want, like users, especially like end users and customers, they want everything to work really, really fast. And people are just becoming like really impatient when it comes to speed of services, speed of like the applications that they're using. And if things are slow, I just don't think that would be a good user experience.
Yep, I agree with you. And that's a great segue into what we're talking about, because users are not patient. I mean, I'm 27 years old. What did I say? I'm 27F. And so I'm older than Talia. It doesn't look it, but I am. And that was meant, yeah, whatever. So but I like stuff fast. if I click submit, if I click refresh, that site needs to load fast. If it's not, it's broken. I'm moving on. And this is where we go back to that when I was talking about storage first. It's also synchronous versus asynchronous. Talia, you want to tell them what synchronous versus asynchronous is?
Yeah. So basically, when we're talking about sync versus async, so in a synchronous model, you have commands, right? So you're telling the service, like, go do something, go place this order, go do this thing. It's basically just command driven. And Lambda basically is made to execute and returns a response once the code is finished executing. So you have to wait until that response comes back. And, there's, possibilities of timeouts, or things could happen, but you need to wait until that response comes back. On the other hand, in an asynchronous model, like when you have events, events are things that happen that can trigger your Lambda function. They can trigger other things that happen in your application. And events within your application occur, and then they're observed by other services. And the services that want to have an action based on that event, then they'll get triggered and perform whatever action they need to. So the response is returned upon invocation, and then the processing continues in the background. So there's no like waiting. It's just who wants to know about this thing. Once the correct people know, then they'll take action if they want to.
That's right. And with the power of this, again, segueing from what you'd said earlier, customers don't want to wait. They would rather get something back that says, hey, we got your request and we're working on it. So we're not going to block you from going on and doing your thing.
Right.
And then we do all that, like Talia said, all the events happening, woo, 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 bing, bing, all that kind of stuff. And they don't make noises, but in my head they do. And then versus blocking them and saying, I'm going to spin this wheel for the next 17 to 32 seconds. Watch it and see if you can touch the blue as it comes around or whatever. I mean, it's ridiculous to make a customer wait on stuff that doesn't require their input. And that's what we talk about. It's sometimes while the process as a whole isn't faster asynchronously and synchronously, it appears faster because the customer isn't waiting.
Right.
So
and both in terms of today, like both DynamoDB and Lambda are event driven, and they both use events to as they work. So if we go back to the Amazon.com example, like when people are placing orders on like really high sales days, like there's a bunch of things that have to happen. The fulfillment center has to be alerted, and the notification has to be sent out, and all this stuff happens. We have to process your credit card information. Everything happens at different rates, and normally the rate at which people place order and the rate at which the fulfillment centers can get the boxes out of the doors, normally like that's the same. But like on high traffic days, people hit that button immensely faster than the fulfillment centers can operate. But that's okay, because the backend is going to work itself through. It has the orders saved in a database, and it's just going to process them one by one as people order. So this is a really great way to be able to perform under heavy load when you have like really big sales events.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I was looking. Sorry, I got distracted by this comment. Are you her age in Hex now? That was rude, Dan MBA. And I don't want you to come to the show anymore. So, because you're always mean to me. No, that's not true. I'll let you buy me a Diet Dr. Pepper, though. So, yes, dead on. Great example. All right. I'm gonna hush for a second. I know you've got some stuff you're gonna bring up, so
Yeah,
let's get into this.
I want to talk a little bit about Amazon DynamoDB and Lambda security. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen really quick. Let's see if I can get this to work.
I know somebody asked me for my connection info. I did put it in the Twitch. I'll put it in the YouTube as well. I do have an Instagram. I don't remember what it is. Someone asked me about my Instagram. I don't use Instagram. That's where I'm too old. So there you go. All right.
All right. Eric, I can't see you right now, but can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great.
I'm sorry. Dan's still making fun of me, Talia. I'm going to ban him. Can I ban him?
No, I like that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So I want to talk about the Lambda permissions model because this is how Lambda can talk to DynamoDB. Basically, when you use Lambda, there's two permissions that have to be implemented. You have the function policy, and then you have the execution role. So a function policy grants permission to access your function. So you can use IAM, Identity and Access Management, to manage access to the function. So you basically manage your permissions in a permissions policy that you can apply to IAM users, groups, or roles. And then to grant permissions to other accounts or AWS services that use your Lambda resources, you use a policy that applies to the resource itself. So let's say, for example, that you want to upload to an S3 bucket to invoke your Lambda function. How do we know that that function is allowed to be invoked by S3 by that upload event? So for that, you need a function policy. Lambda will then trust S3 to invoke this function when that upload occurs. So the function policy allows the event source of the Lambda function to have the proper permissions it needs to invoke the Lambda function. So basically, the way that you want to think about this is that everything in the function policy happens before the function starts. And then you have the execution role. And the execution role defines what your function can access once it's invoked. So by default, you get access to CloudWatch logs for log streaming. And Lambda uses the execution role to know what other resources it's allowed to access. So for example, if your Lambda function needs to write something to a DynamoDB table, you need to grant permission to DynamoDB to talk to your Lambda function. So the way to think about this is like function policies happen before the function starts, execution roles happen after the function executes or while it's executing. Anything you want to add there, Eric?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it on there. The way I say it is often function policies are what can things do to the Lambda function, and execution role are what can the Lambda function do. So yeah, you explain that is dead on. And in our scenario, when we talk about DynamoDB, if the Lambda function comes before the DynamoDB, then you're saying to the function, I'm going to give you an execution role that allows you to write, read, whatever DynamoDB. If it comes after, now here's what's kind of interesting. If I'm invoking the Lambda function from the DynamoDB stream, then I have to apply that to the function policy. I have to say, I'm going to allow the DynamoDB stream to invoke the Lambda function. So it all depends on order. And one of the things we say with this is start with the absolute minimal access, least privileged, right? And we say, so when I create a role for a Lambda function to read and write from DynamoDB, I only create a role to do those things. If it's only reading, that's all it has permission to do. If it's only writing, that's all it has permission to do. I don't do a CRUD unless literally it is going to create, read, update, and delete. So really granular, and IAM allows you to do that. I say IAM, which Quinny Pig has made fun of me for. But that's not the only thing he's made fun of me for, so I'm okay with that. So,
yeah, you hit it right on the nose. The principle of least privilege is so important, not just with DynamoDB and Lambda, but just in general when you're building serverless. You just want to make sure that you only have the permissions needed to do what you need to do, and it makes your application more secure because you don't want like star policies everywhere. That's just going to be bad.
Sorry, I was muted because I was coughing. So, yep. Yeah, good. Zach, this is absolutely true. Least privileges for Lambda functions, FNS. That's functions. Provide only needed. Yep, that's exactly right. We did have a question. I think Kurt is actually answering it, and it's talking about. I don't know if you saw this. Oh no, you can't see it because of the screen. But basically, Dan MBA said I'm getting snarky now that I'm a Harvard lecturer. I'm not a Harvard lecturer yet, but it's coming, and it's only going to be 1 hour on a Saturday. But I don't care. It's going to go on my resume. So yes. I'm looking
I just want to know. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm looking for a question, so you go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to briefly show you guys how to do this, like how to give, how to grant Lambda access to DynamoDB. So basically, I'm going to demonstrate how to create an IAM policy that's going to be attached to a role, and then the role is going to be used to grant a Lambda function access to a DynamoDB table. And so like we talked about before, when you use an IAM policy and role to control access, you can really tightly control which services the Lambda function can access. It also includes the permissions to allow Lambda to write log files to Amazon CloudWatch. So in this example, I'm going to use a Lambda function that's number 1 in this diagram to make read API calls such as get or scan, and write API calls such as put or update to a DynamoDB table, which is labeled number 2. And then the Lambda function also writes log files to CloudWatch logs, that's shown by number 3. And then the Lambda function uses an IAM role, number 4, that has an IAM policy attached that grants access to DynamoDB and CloudWatch, that's seen in number 5. So if you like to follow along, use this QR code for all the data that you need to enter. If you want to do this in the console, I'm also going to post, or actually maybe Eric can post the link to these DynamoDB videos, the learning paths that I created.
I'll do right now.
So the first step you have to do is to grant Lambda access to DynamoDB is to create an IAM policy with JSON, and you can do this in IAM in the console or in SAM, which is Eric's baby firstborn child.
Right.
And then
Sam, baby, everything's done with baby. Or I said baby with Sam.
Yeah.
I have to go now.
And so all of these actions, all of these permissions are available on the SAM documentation. Has like a huge list of all of the permissions that you can add to your policy. So anyway, you can do this either in the console or SAM. You're going to attach this policy to a role, and then this role is going to be attached to the Lambda function, which is going to assume the required access to DynamoDB. So now we're going to attach this to a role. And so from the console, you're going to go to the IAM console and choose roles, and then create the role. And then you're going to choose the AWS service, which is Lambda. And then on the attached permissions policy page, you're going to enter the name of the policy you created. And you just have, basically what you've just done is you've just attached the policy you created to the new IAM role, which can now be used by a Lambda function. So now when you go to your Lambda function, you can either add this to an existing Lambda function, or you can create a new Lambda function, and then you'll be able to see that role in the existing role dropdown. So now your Lambda function has access to CloudWatch logs and DynamoDB. It can talk to both of those services.
But I know, Talia, that you would normally do this in SAM.
This is true, but tell me why.
That was so hesitant. I feel like you're lying to me. So.
I feel like anything I do in the console, you would just say, no, do it in SAM.
Here, let me get serious on that for a moment. Okay, I'm done. No, let me get serious for a minute. I don't have a problem with the console. I think the console is a great way to learn. And when Talia came to our team, she's a phenomenal tech. She's a phenomenal speaker, but she was new to serverless. And so it was really fun to talk to her and say, how are you learning? How are you kind of wrapping your head around all this, and it was the console, right? I mean, a lot of it was in the console. And so, no, I think there's huge benefits to the console. I just encourage, and I'm not saying you, although you are part of you. I encourage you, but you as anybody listening, to get to infrastructure as code as fast as you can, because it's more scalable.
Yeah.
Right. You can, it's scalable, it's reproducible, it's versionable, all those things. And while, yes, I am a huge SAM fan, SAM is the only one I can actually spell. There's another one, C something, D something, K something. CDK is a fantastic one as well. I have no problem with that. In fact, SAM, the CLI is we're working to have that work with both of them. But bottom line, get to infrastructure as code as fast as you can. And I have seen Talia do IAC. She's killing it. So there you go.
Oh, I think a lot of people start with the console normally as like they're trying to learn. And I think it is a really great way to learn. And like, I'm a visual learner, so I like to visually see things. And then once you learn, like, oh, this is how you can, like, this is how these services work, then like SAM makes more sense. I've never tried using, I mean, I don't know, but like I'd be curious to see if someone just started out with SAM without using the console at all. I don't know what kind of experience that would be, but that's not the way I do it.
Probably be a harder experience. However, one of the things that I will do, but we're just chasing all over on this one, but that's okay. I've had fun. Oh, and I went fuzzy for a minute there. One of the things that I will do when we were, and again, I hate saying this over and over, but Ben and I were in Saudi Arabia about 3 weeks ago, and we were blown away by, I mean, I could tell stories all week on that one, but we're blown away by how much they were loving the idea of serverless. And so I ended up sitting down with it was a whole group of college students. And what I did is I threw up on the laptop and I said, do y'all want to see some magic? You want to see some magic? You know, ooh, hey, yeah. So anyway, I pulled up and I literally just SAM init. I created a project and I deployed it. And I was able to deploy it in about 3 minutes, right? Depending, our internet was a little sketchy there, but once it deployed, and then I was able to give them a link to check on their phones, and it was they got it very quickly. You were able to bring that up, but they couldn't reproduce that to just jump into IAC and do that is like, whoa, okay. So then we point them to the console and say, start learning this. But I think just seeing it in action, it's kind of the magic of serverless and event-driven architecture, and it was really cool. So,
yeah.
And we've got a lot of comments going on about IAC. Serverless.com is also a great IAC. They're a partner of ours. We love them, and so doing some great things. Kind of going through here to make sure we don't have any questions. Oh yeah, so here's a good point. I do it in the console first, then Postman, then YAML. So when I'm doing API gateway and now step functions as well, I do both those in the console first. I build my open API for API gateway because I can't memorize open API. I'm older than Talia, remember that? And in hex code only. And I can't remember. And the other one I do is step functions because I think the Workflow Studio is off the charts. So okay, so we have about 15. Talia and I have to end just a little bit early today for technical reasons that I won't bore you with. But we have about 15 minutes. Talia, what do you want to show them next?
So I just want to show some use cases by industry. I know we talked a lot about like e-commerce and like retail use cases for DynamoDB, but I just wanted to show this slide because it shows like the multiple industries that DynamoDB you can use to like span across. So you can use DynamoDB for like banks, financial institutions to like detect fraud and suspicious user transactions. Banks can use it for supporting mobile applications as well as for mainframe offloading. DynamoDB is also great for like the gaming industry. It can be used for like storing game stats, leaderboards, and player data stores. Software companies like Uber and Lyft use DynamoDB for metadata caches and data stores. And then there's ad tech companies that use DynamoDB to store marketing data, such as like user profiles, user events, clicks, visited links. And they use that to like make their user experience better. We talked about retail already. And then media and entertainment companies use DynamoDB for user data stores and media metadata stores. So I just wanted to show this because I know we talked a lot about like Amazon.com, but there's so many other use cases to use DynamoDB for.
And this is a great cross section of them. And one of the things I always like to bring up is really fun is global tables. And the power that brings of a you have a main global table, or active. It's not, this one's active and this one's just syncing up, but it's the ability to, in multi regions, to be able to pass that data around and sync those up, and lots of power there that these industries are seeing and taking advantage of. We got a lot of questions going on. You want to go to some questions for a bit?
Yeah, I'm going to close the slide so I can see.
It's gone. Yeah. Okay. So let me jump through here. I'm going back up a little bit. And while we're talking about some stuff, I know Kirk's killing it out there. He's answering a lot of questions. Let's go here. So, okay. I love how that's I am passionate. But all right. So for caching, do you remember? That is my face right there. Doesn't that look like my face? Except for, well, I guess we're all. Okay. Do you remember, do you recommend to implement a strategy with Redis or use DAX, and why DAX? So these are kind of two different use cases, right? So Redis is very much, it is caching, right? If Redis goes down, that's all gone because it's all in memory, right? So it's there. Whereas DynamoDB is persistent, right? So DynamoDB so something we talked about, the redundancy and durability of DynamoDB. When DynamoDB writes, you get 6 copies of the data across 3 regions. If you know anything about me, that's any number I want it to be. So when you see that's not 6, that's not a 3. Yes, it is. So, but you just got to listen close. So we get, I could do 3, but I have to take my shoe off and I'm not flexible. So it's weird. So they're kind of two different things. So if you want that persistent, then DynamoDB. If you don't need the persistence, you can look at doing a Redis kind of thing, kind of see what works better for you. DAX, if you're not familiar with DAX is the DynamoDB accelerator. Okay, and it does actually bring up, and Kurt, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat here, I believe it's a Redis cluster. And it actually is kind of a transparent cache in front of DynamoDB. The DynamoDB is already wicked fast. It's really fast. But this could shave off milliseconds and having it in memory cache that's already kind of managed for you. So it is not Redis, or what is it, Kurt? Is it Memcache, or is it our own thing? All right. So sometimes I get it wrong. Talia, you've just witnessed it. Actually, Talia's seen it a lot. So, but anyway, it does handle that caching for you. So hopefully that kind of gives you some information on kind of when I would do Redis and when I would do DynamoDB. It is our own thing. Okay. As he's telling me. Okay, great. So to clarify, DAX is our own thing, but it is transparent cache and it works phenomenal. So, all right, let me jump back here. We had some about, okay, Dan, I'm only going to answer this because they pay me and tell me I have to, but you've been pretty rude to me through the stream, so I might tell you the wrong answer, and Talia will tell you if I'm just kidding. Any thoughts about adding update and delete only SAM policy templates? I think that's a good idea. So what he's saying is in our SAM policy templates, which I recommend you always start with SAM policy templates. That's before you write your own rules, things like that. Start with the SAM policy template. And so really what we have read ones, we have write ones, but I think you're right. I don't think we have an update and delete or separately. So worth looking at. And I'll check with the team, see if that's something that we can put in there. Talia, do you see any other questions I'm going through here?
Yeah, I see one by Michael WL84, currently using CloudFormation for all our IAC. I understand SAM can provide an easier way to use abstraction on top of CloudFormation, but any other good reasons why we should consider shifting to using SAM? So I'll answer this and then I'll let Eric answer this too, because Sam is
go.
child. So SAM is built on top of CloudFormation. Wait, what does your shirt say, Eric?
It says signs I talk about SAM too much. This is the SAM picture of SAM in space that my daughter drew. That's right. But, I'm sorry, go ahead, Talia.
So SAM is built on top of CloudFormation, and it's specifically built for serverless applications. So when you build a SAM template, you have, I think there's 7, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong,
You're right.
7 different resource types that you can use for your serverless applications. And if you're building with serverless, I think SAM is like, it simplifies everything for you. And it's built with a CloudFormation template, so you still have all those capabilities. But
yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing I would add is one SAM resource can often expand into many CloudFormation resources. So it reduces. So like with the Lambda function, it's going to create API gateway. It's going to create the roles. It's going to create the function itself, all within one set of declarations. But yeah, it's Talia got it right. Yeah, it's exactly right. Seven serverless specific ones, but you can still use standard CloudFormation as well. I think the real advantage you get with this, as we explained, so that's the transform, right? That's the actual templating. What you get with SAM is the SAM CLI, and that's where just a ton of power is, specifically the SAM Accelerate that we've been building over the last probably half a year, which allows you to sync code immediately. So you can test code in live development environments in the cloud against real, functions and SQS and all that within seconds. So we can sync that. And we're working to make it smaller and smaller and smaller. So, yeah.
There's a question that says, can you tell more about what you mean by create SAM templates for each service? I don't think so. SAM templates, you don't create one for each service. Your SAM template has resources inside of it.
There you go. Yep.
So you wouldn't create a SAM template for each resource. You would create one SAM template for your application, and then in that you would have your resources that you need.
That's right. Yep.
Right.
That's ditto. Yep. You would declare. So SAM is built. Oh, so get some other things going on here. Yeah. Good to call out. SAM does not speed up writes, right? So because it's gonna. I'm sorry, Sam. How you doing? DAX doesn't speed up writes because it's going through DAX to write to DynamoDB. Same speed there. What it does is it's written to cache coming back, or it's written to cache in there somewhere in the process there. Ooh, hand wavy. And so you no longer read from the database if your key matches to get it out of DAX. So this is an interesting statement. I like it. Anchor 957 says SAM is concise CloudFormation. Yep. Okay. Let's go.
One, would you recommend using CDK versus SAM? I think CDK, it just allows you to write a little bit more code to make it a little bit more specific, right, Eric? And SAM is more, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to interrupt you because you were going great, but yeah, you're absolutely right. CDK is code, right? And we could get it if Ben Kehoe were here, we'd get in a debate, configuration code and stuff like that. But SAM is YAML. That's it. It's YAML and it's configuration. Debatable, but it's configuration. CDK is code. You can use Python, TypeScript, Node, Java. There's some other ones coming out, .NET, I believe. So yeah, the thing about it though is when you ask me what would you recommend using CDK or SAM, it's preference. It really is. CDK is used for serverless a lot, but it's not specific to serverless. SAM is specific to serverless and comes with the CLI, but the CLI, a lot of the commands we use in CLI will work natively with CDK, and we're working to make that more so. So it's really, you pick which one you want, bring any framework, and bring any templating, and we'll run CLI with it. So I think we kind of politely ran around that question and said, you pick whatever you want. So
yeah.
All right.
Just on that, like, I think with building serverless, you have a lot of options. Like you have the console, you have the SAM CLI, you have CDK, you have a lot of options based on like your preferences. You have like the step functions, visual workflow studio, like however, that's like drag and drop. If you guys haven't used it, you should definitely check that out. But however you like to learn and however you like to build, if you're a code person and if you love writing code, check out the CDK. If you want to deploy resources with, instantly, then try SAM. If you like the visual drag and drop, and if you want to see things, then use the console. So it's really based on like your preferences and how you how you learn and how you like to build.
Yeah, a solid answer. Going back again, it's been really fun to watch Talia because I've been doing this since the day it came out, right? So it was really interesting. Some things that I assume make sense, Talia will be like, "Oh, this doesn't make sense," and then when I look at it, I go, "Oh my gosh, that doesn't make sense unless you know all the background." So Talia has been a gold mine of. I mean, she's technically a giant, and so she's been very good at helping us kind of knocking this out. So. We did have a question up here, back to DynamoDB and with Lambda function stuff. On microservice architecture, you would recommend using a single table design or one table per microservice? I'm talking about 20 microservices and about 200 access patterns. Yeah, Kirk already threw it out there. It depends. It does depend. Tal, you want to jump, or you want me to go with this one?
You can take this.
Okay. So with this, it depends on who's in the room. If Rick Houlihan were here, he'd go single table. I don't care if you got a billion access patterns. Actually, I don't know if he'd say that, but he would lean towards single table. I guess, and Kirk said it best. It depends. It depends on a lot of variables. But some things to think about is it the same data, right? Do these different access patterns, are they reading from the same data but getting obviously different parts of it? Then yeah, I would try. I would probably not try to have duplicate data across multiple tables that I'm trying to keep in sync, right? So there's some advantage to that. I would also, look at the access patterns. Are we doing? Do we really need 200? Or can we do some work on that where we can get some more standard ones? I don't know, but yeah, Kirk also said single table design is not for everything. The thing I would tell you, and there's a lot of different things it is, but if you find yourself spending more time trying to figure out how to do it in single table and losing time, that I know I could do this in two tables and we can get out there. There's a balance there, right? We want to be single table. That's what all the cool kids are doing, but that's not necessarily for everything. And so again, it's an it depends question. I would heavily encourage you to check out Alex DeBree's book on patterning and access patterns to help decide that. And reach out to Kirk. Kirk I don't know. Hey, Kirk, would you post it's in Twitter, and I'll move over to YouTube. Would you post your your Twitter handle? I'm sorry, it's in Twitch, but your Twitter handle, and I'll move it over, and we'll get you more information on that. But Anderson, that's a great question. I don't think I answered it entirely, but hopefully that gives you some things to think about.
I think this is also a really good example of like one size does not fit all. Like when you're using serverless and all of these different services to build your applications, like there isn't one size fits all. Like even though you have this architecture and someone else has the exact same architecture, you could be using completely different services based on what your users need and based on what your customers' requirements are. So just because you have two applications doing the same thing, they could be built completely differently based on requirements and based on what people need.
Like any other pattern, there's a million ways to do it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, I think we went all over the place on this, and I think that was a good thing. I'm really excited. Talia and I have to wrap it up, but reach out to us. Both of our Twitter handles are on here. And keep an eye out. Talia, we're doing some traveling, and I'm pretty excited. Yeah. I don't think Talia is as excited about this as I am, but Talia and I are going to be in Israel. I actually think she's excited about traveling, but not with me so much, because when we get to Israel, Talia, I plan on testing my Hebrew. I took 2 years of Hebrew in my master's studies, and so now it's biblical Hebrew, but I'm going to try it out. So are you excited about that? Are you ready?
No. So I lived in Israel, in Tel Aviv, for like almost 2 years. And so I speak a little bit of Hebrew. I'm not like totally fluent, but I speak. And so I told Eric when we go for the AWS summit in May, it's May 18th, that, I'll show him around and I'll help like translate things for him. But if you piss me off, I will translate.
Bad words to say.
I will translate incorrectly for you on purpose.
Oh man! Yeah, so I'm doomed because I will make her mad. That's how we were. More brother sister than you could possibly imagine here. So I'm sure I will irritate her. So with that, hey folks, thank you so much, Talia. It was great. Your wealth of knowledge, DynamoDB queen here. So I don't know if that's right, but there it is. Sorry, I hope that wasn't weird. But you are an expert in it, and I appreciate it. And if you want to know more, again, check out. I'm going to post it one more time. It's up on the stream, but s12d.com /DDB. I have to type while I talk while I type. This is the link to Talia's learning path to learn more about DynamoDB. I encourage you to check it out. Really good stuff there. And with that, Talia, you got anything you want to throw out before we go?
That's it. See you all soon.
Oh, look, Alex Debris is in there. Alex, I threw your name out there. Right on. Alex Debris said, good show. Oh, that's the wrong one. I still can't get to it. There it is. We can call it a day, Talia. Take the rest of the day off. So,
Bye,
all right,
guys.
good. Bye, all.